let's take a look at where we're at right now. It's time for the Sefer Zohar. We're learning the Matak B'Devash, and we are in Parshas Vayishlach. So let's go over here. Let's find our Zohar here in the Matak B'Devash. If you go to page Tav Kuf Pei Bet, you're going to see the Zohar. Turns out that it's at the bottom of the page, and we're in a discussion between Rebbe Lazar and Rebbe Yossi. So let's see if I can pick it up, try to say it as best I can. Rebbe Lazar and Rebbe Yossi have Ozli Ba'orcha. So they were traveling along their way. I'm a Rebbe Yossi, the Rebbe Lazar. Rebbe Yossi said to Rebbe Lazar, Vadai had the Amat. What you have been talking about, they've been in a conversation. And what were they talking about? The Yaakov Shleim the Avaranihu. That Yaakov Emishu. Masha Amarta, that you said, She Yaakov Koya Bechir Ha'avos. He is the chosen of the Avos. He's the brightest shining light. But Bechir means Lashon, chosen. V'hu Achil L'kol Sitrit. V'hu Achos B'kol Chagimul Kavim. And that's what his claim is. What his greatness is. That he is actually holding on to all three lines. He is the middle line. And he's able to hold from the middle, the right, and the left together. That's the right represents Abraham, and the left represents Yitzchak. He's in the middle, and those three elements of Kedusha are all within Yaakov. V'kara Shemei Yisroel, but he's also called by that name. V'chasiv lo yikara Shemecha od Yaakov, your name's not going to be called Yaakov anymore. Ki'im Yisroel yehieh Shemecha, but your name rather will be Yisroel. Let's go to the next page. And it says, Chasiv v'yikra Shemo Yisroel. And we have a pasuk that it says that his name now is going to be Yisroel. Amaya hadar kudsha barichu v'karba le Yaakov v'kama zimnim. So lama chazar HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if the case is that he's been named now, that Kodesh Baruch Hu tells him his name is going to be Yisroel. So lama chazar HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'karba lo Yaakov v'kama pamim. But even after that time, many times he's called Yaakov. So is it Yisroel or is it Yaakov? That's his question. V'kula karan le Yaakov k'lakadmin, and everybody around him, all the people that knew him, called him Yaakov. Ilhachi. So if that's the case, mahu, what does it mean? Below Yakar Shemcha od Yaakov. When Kodesh Baruch Hu says to him, your name won't be called Yaakov anymore. So what does it mean? So he says, Ratzon Lomar mal ho'il b'devar. How did his words help? Amalei, Rebbe Lazar says, Rebbe Yossi, Shafak Amat. This is a good question. This is a good thing to discuss. So let's go on. If it could day l'taretz koshiso. So in order to be able to answer that question, Pasuk v'Omer, that who are we talking to? Rather than Rebbe Yossi. So Rebbe Lazar now says to him, he says, Hashem kegibor yetze. Hashem, like a mighty man, goes out. Keish melchamos yair kino. He like a man of war, a fighter. Yoer, he will arouse kino, that jealousy. So he says, what's this talking about? So he says, Haikra, this pasuk, ukumuhu. Now, this has been discussed in detail in the yeshiva. That's what we're saying. Aval, but talchazi kegibor yetze. But let's look at this a little bit more closely. It says, like a mighty man, he goes out. So this is Gibor's Lashon Gevurah and Din. Lama kasa b'kaf hadimyon. Why do we have the kaf, which means like, before this word? Gibor b'boyle, just without the kaf, just said he woes out mighty, mighty. That's all you need to say. Kama shakasa Hashem Izuz v'gibor. Like it says, for example, there's another example. He's a mighty, mighty, powerful man. Became mashukasa ki ish milchoma, so that we also have this kaf, which appears in first of the word ish. So it should just said ish milchoma. He's an ish kaf hadimyon. This is the comparable kaf that you're putting out in front of this word. So it's ish milchoma is beboyle. Just say the word ish. Ella ha itmar. But this is really what we're talking about. He says, Yudke Vavke Havaya. Bekal Asa Rachme Ihu Vadai. Wherever you see this name used, it refers to Rachmanis, mercy, and the extension of kindness. Shem Havaya Bekal Makom Hu Shem Rachme Bavadai. Kudsha Barichu Havaya Shemei Ihu. So Kodesh Baruch Hu, we're talking about Zer Anpin here. He says a Kodesh Baruch Hu Shuhat Tiferes. The Tiferes means the middle line. So Kodesh Baruch Hu is the middle line. He says Havaya Shemo. His name is Yud Kei Vav Kei. Dechsev Ani Havaya Hu Shemi. So that is the middle line, incorporates everything else. So that's his name. He's Havaya Yud Kei Vav Kei, mercy. Pirish Ki Shem Havaya Hu Shemo Ha'etzem. That is the essence of Zer Anpin, of Tiferes. That is its essence. That it is mercy. Hamora al Pa'ulas Arachme, which really teaches you the action of where he how he acts. That is a Kodesh Baruch Hu in terms of mercy. But we see that, wait a minute, there are some times when a Kodesh Baruch Hu is not called by that name. It's called by another name, Elokim. Hare Anu Roim, we see. Shalapamim Nikra Shemo Elokim. V'hu Dinah B'kol Aser. Wherever you see the name Elokim, it refers to Din. So he said, V'eich Amrat, so how could you say, Sheshemo ha'etzem hu shem havaya. If his name is Havaya, and that's really what he is, then why do we call him Elokim sometimes? Mataratz Ella, but rather, Lo'olam Iker ve'etzem Shemo, the main root of his name, hu shem Havaya, is the name Havaya, which Hamora al Pa'ulas Arachman, which teaches us that he acts in what was the right word? In a way of Rachmanas. So he said, Al-Kain, Bezimna d'azgiu z'koyim ba'alma. So therefore, at a time when there were a lot of righteous people in the world, Havaya Shemeh, that makes the name, we see now how bright and shiny the name of mercy is, Yud Kei Vav Kei, V'shma d'rachme. V'zman shemis rabim tzadikim ba'olam. So when there's a lot of righteous people, and you're living in a community of tremendous Torah, who nikru b'shmo harawelo, then Hashem is called by the name that's fit for him. Shem Havaya, that's the name. O Poel Rachamim Ki Zechu Ritzona Yisbarach, because that's really what the ultimate goal of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is. But when there's a lot of bad things, and we're really off the derek, and we're not going the right way, Elohim Shemei, V'Iskre B'Shma de Elokim. And he's called by this other name, which we say is Din. If his mansion is Rabbo Rishoyim Ba'olam, when there's a lot of bad people. Shemo Hu Elokim, Lashon Din. V'Nikra B'Shem Shaladin. He's called by the name of the Din itself. Mitzad HaMakablim, that's in return to those who are going to receive this Din. Shehim HaMa'orim as a Din, because they are the ones that are arousing the Din. So the Elokim comes onto the people who receive that Din. Even at the moment, Shenif hadin, that the din is working, people are being punished, individuals, groups, whatever. Al Rishoim, it's coming to people who are behaving badly. Ein bo shinu yisbarach, but that is the name itself, that is the essence of Tiferes, or Zer Anpin, or what we're calling, doesn't change. Kafilu oz, because even then, while things are being punished, Ratzona yisbarach, what does Hashem want? What does Yud Kei Vav Kei, that is the essence of this name, want? The Rachem al Rishoim, to have mercy upon the people that are being punished. Ela shehem mitzad ma'asehim, but the problem is that in a balance scale, which is also the middle line, these people are out of bounds. Gormin shakodesh baruch hu, so it causes that Kodesh Baruch Hu shu ba'al rachamim, who's the master of mercy, yisnagei imachan kegibor hapoel din. So now he acts like, here not the cough here, he's like, he is not the master of din, but he acts like it. Avohu ena gibor mamish, but he's not really a powerful man. He's not that punisher. Ki ena mishtana ela shemara as atzmo kagibor. It's not that he changes, but rather that he shows himself like a mighty man. But lakach, and so therefore, Omar Akosov, the pasuk says, Ki gibor, like, with that cough, Ki ish melchama, he's like a man who's a warrior, like a punisher. Kach bezimna the Yaakov, so now let's go back and look at Yaakov. Lo hava bein sanav, velo hava be'ara achra. If he was in a situation where he was not amongst people who hated him, and he was not amongst people in a foreign language, Karle Yisroel, that's when he's called Yisroel. But let's say he's in a foreign language, like a foreign place, like Padamarim, say for example, with Lavan. Or he's surrounded by Esav and his family. So he says, Yaakov, and that's when they call him Yaakov. And the Mata against the remez, in order to show us, and give us a hint, in order to be able to save himself from the people that are around him that hated him, his enemies, so therefore he had to custom himself in a different way, ba'akava, by becoming difficult. That's where he held Esav back. He had a hold of his ankle. Then we see him later on that becomes a trickster, Arma, and he actually becomes a Ramai as well. He has to do what he needs to do to survive with characters like Esav and Lavan. But then he says, Amalo Rebbe Yosef. And Rebbe Yosef says, you know what? You didn't really answer that question. The Rebbe Elazar, he says that to him, Adayim lo nisyashiv v'davar, you didn't answer. Dixiv lo yakari, because there's this phrase, you will not be called anymore by that name. But we still keep calling him by that name. We call him Yaakov still. The Od Gosh is another question. What you said like this, the Kad Hava Bein Sonim, when he's annoying, when he was in the midst of people who hated him. Oh, Ba'ara Achra, or he's in a foreign land, Kari Le Yaakov, that's when they automatically call him Yaakov. So the Zohar says to Chazi, come and sing. He says, Ksiv Yeshev Yaakov Be'eretz Megure Aviv. It's a kasha. He says that, wait a minute, you just said that was in a nice place called Yisroel. When he's in a bad place, let's say like that, bad place, bad situation, they call him Yaakov. But over here he says, but now we have a pasuk that says like this. V'yeshev Yaakov Be'eretz Megure Aviv. What is the land of the sojourning of his fathers? Be'eretz Canaan. That means in Eretz Canaan, Eretz Yisrael. So he wasn't in a foreign language. So Amalei Heshiv Rebbe Elazar answers back, Habakad Misa Ayidmar. This is talking about the beginning, way back. So wait a minute. He translates it different. He says, I already told you, Ki kama de kutra barichu lizimnim iskre Hashem lizimnim iskre Elokim. Kamosha HaKodesh Baruch Lepamim Nikra B'Shem Havaya V'Lepamim Shikra Nikra B'Shem Elokim. So the same thing that you have by Yaakov and Yisroel, you have the same thing by the appearances that when Yud Kei Vav Kei is sometimes called by the name Elokim, and vice versa. And everything really depends on what's going on with the lower world. In other words, how human beings are behaving. So the same thing happens to Yaakov and Yisroel. So what does it depend on? So everything really depends on the situation. That in which Yaakov found himself. So when we say that Yaakov settled, his yashvuso shehoyelo adayim pachad me'esav. So when he says that Yaakov settled, it's talking about Yaakov, right? Yaakov is lashon din. That's what he's saying. He says this is in a situation where he was still afraid of Esav. But immediately when he was parted from Esav, and Esav went on his way, achakach kasav v'Yisroel ahev es Yosef. Then we start talking about the brothers. And we say, then now we call him Yisroel, because he's with the family now. V'kula b'dargim yedin, v'kol hu b'dregas yedua. So this, what does he mean? He says that these are different levels that we can understand. When everything was going right, and there was peace around. Therefore, then Yaakov was receiving his strength from Tiferes, which is Zeranpin. And then he is called Yisroel. But let's say in pressure situation, Beina Oivim, or he's with Goyim, he's surrounded by people who hate him. Oh, Kibo Kocho then Kibo Kocho Meha Malchus, then he receives instead of from Zer Anpin is Yud Kei Vav Kei, he grieves his strength from Malchus for Oz Nikra B'Shem Yaakov, and that's when he's called the name Yaakov. Amadi Itmar, what it says like those Lo Yikara Shimcha Od Yaakov, where it says that your name will no longer be called Yaakov, ain't a pirish yesh isibidav. It's not to say that just because it says your name will no longer be called Yaakov but Yisroel doesn't mean that it's ma'akev, that it holds everything back. Ella lis yashvech shmado kolom shelo yisyashe b'shem zeh lihikare tamid rak Yaakov. There shouldn't come out to a situation where this name settles on him, or this principle that he would never be called Yaakov again. Ella, what it wants to say is Yiyulo Shnei Shemos, that he's now going to have two different names. And then it really so then he will be called by the name of what the situation demands. Now let's look at the end here and let's go over and see this. Amalek. So Od Shal Rebbe Yossi and Rebbe Elazar. So this is all the principle of Rebbe Elazar. That situations change, and as a result of that, Yaakov is adaptable. So I can see this in this sense like this. Yaakov is really in the middle, and he's called Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. But the nature of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is that it's inclined strongly to the right, which is the side of Chesed. Whereas on the other hand, it still holds on to the other side, the side of the left, which is the side of Gevura, or pain, or punishment. He's trying to move that left over to the right. So therefore, we see that he could have two different names. It depends on what he's dealing with. So let's see what, though, who we talk about. So let's see what Rebbe Elazar is going to say. So he said, this is Rebbe Yossi asking Rebbe Elazar. So he says, that it's possible that Yaakov actually has two different names. So he says like this. Im came hoksiv, if that's the case, as written like this. V'lo yikare od es shimcha Avram, and your name should not be called anymore Avram. V'ho yishimcha Avraham, and your name will be Avraham. V'sham lo matzinu od sheyikar v'shem Avram. And there we see, in that particular case, that we have a concept of what he's going to be called in the future. So he said, V'shem V'sham lo matzinu od sheyikar v'shem Avram. It will never be called Avram again. V'kan lama nikra od shemo Yaakov. So if you have, I guess what he's saying, he says, if a situation where Avram Avinu was originally Avram, and now his name is changed to Avraham, it sounds very similar to when your name is Yaakov, and it gets changed over to Yisroel. Over there by Avraham, we don't see any situation where he doesn't continue on being Avraham from that point on. So Amalek, so therefore Rebbe Elazar comes along and he brings an answer to that. You can't compare, in other words, Rebbe Yossi's kasha is that you can't compare Yaakov to Avraham, or you should be able to. The rule by Avraham should be the same one for Yaakov. So Rebbe Hassam Kasiv V'hoyu, because he says it's a different word over there. V'hoyu is the future word. Sham Kasiv V'hoyu Shimcha Avraham. That is that in the future your name will be called Avraham. Hamora al davar ha'asi v'hakayim tamid. This is something that's going to happen in the future, and it's going to be constantly that way, because the flow of life will now be coming through the name Avraham. V'adar kaima b'hachu shma. V'lechem niskayim v'nishar tamid b'shem Avraham. So therefore he stays like that. He's now called Avraham because this is his future. But over here in our case of Yaakov and Yisroel, kasiv v'hoyu. It says lo kasiv v'hoyu. It doesn't talk about the future. You don't have that word. But it means rather like this. If it should come about that your name will be called Yisroel. It doesn't say, it says ki'im. Only now, that's what it means. It says only now your name will be called Yisroel. It's not the same thing as saying that you will be called Yisroel in the future, because the word v'hoya, which means in the future, it will be, it's not written there. Shemachal Yisroel v'rafila bezim nachada. Sagile. So even if it's only going to be one time that it's going to be called Yisroel, that's enough. Afilu im rak pam achas choya nikra b'torah b'shem Yisroel. So the Torah would call him Yisroel. Choya die, because that's what it is. Sometimes you're going to be called Yisroel. So dialo. So now the Matu brings in, this Rashi print. He's trying to help us out a little bit, get a little bit more background on this. So he said, "Lahorosh and nekasher b'midas tiferes hanikra Yisroel." This to tell you that when he is tied to this midah of tiferes, which is once again, it's the balance, it's the middle line, then he's called Yisroel. Kol shchein the zimnim kach v'lezimnim kach. Mikol shchein, and it's certainly true. Shalapamem nikra Yisroel, lapamem Yaakov. Sometimes he's called Yisroel, sometimes he's called Yaakov. Vada she is kayim masha kosev, then for certain you fulfill this. Kim Yisrael yiyeh shemecho, but only we'll see that your name will be called Yisroel. Uma Yisrael nikroim b'tzmidos b'nei Yisroel v'locha b'nei Yaakov. So we're called the b'nei Yisroel. We're not called the b'nei Yaakov. We are the b'nei Yaakov, but we're called b'nei Yisroel. Hatam hu, and the reason for this is v'kad is atru bonoi, v'kasher nis atru bonov b'maimed har Sinai. So he said this, once again, he's working on this concept of the names that are used on people, are the names used. Let's just say that idea in general depends situationally. We do see that. He said, but he says, "V'kad is atru bonoi," when his children, the Jewish people, stood at Har Sinai, and they had b'kohanim shenivcharo hakahanim mitzad chesed, that they chose the kohanim were chosen to be on the side of chesed. V'levoy nivchara halavim mitzad gevur. Remember, the Jewish people are in between these two. V'istalku u'v'nis'ala Yisroel b'tiferes, and what happens is, in this balance, as a Kodesh Baruch Hu is coming towards us, it's because we are coming towards Him. And as we're coming through this middle path, we are reaching Him. B'dargei meloyin, v'nis'ala b'kol madregos elyonos, and the Jewish people then began to rise. All the upper levels shall call havok the zer anpin. In other words, they start off into Malchus, and then all of the rest of the spheres is zer anpin. Ayedei sheyesh b'Yisrael sheish madregos, because now we see that the Jewish people have six different levels. The Haina Chasidim mitzad chesed, there are Chasidim, people who are considered to be the righteous ones, the side of chesed. Giburim mitzad gevura, and powerful men, warriors, on the side of gevura. Talmidei Chacham mitzad tiferes, and then Talmidei Chacham on the side of tiferes. Chodzim v'neviim b'sad netzach and hod, and so we're showing how all of this kedusha can manifest in people. We have visionaries, people, and neviim and prophets who work on Ruach HaKodesh mitzad netzach and hod, and they come from the netzach and hod of tiferes. Tzadikim mitzad yisod, and now he lists the different spheros and how the different kinds of people, the righteous people, are counted. Kedin is ate b'shma do todir. So v'oz nis'ater b'nis'ala al yadam. So through these kinds of people, these six that he's mentioning here, these six types of righteous people, it elevates Yaakov tremendously. Yaakov Avihim, b'shem Yisroel Tameh, that as long as this is going on and we are growing spiritually, then Yaakov Avinu is always called Yisroel. V'chein nikra bonav, so therefore his children who keep the Torah are called the Bnei Yisroel. This is Baruch Fleischman for the Tikkun Elevator Kollel. I hope you enjoyed this shir. Thank you very much.